Welcome to Phoenix Podcast, hosted by Amin Moinian, where we deep dive into politics and economics and explore the philosophies and histories behind today's challenges. Today, we're tackling a question that's at the heart of so many of those challenges. When is it okay to bend the rules? And when should we stand firm on our principles?
It's a fascinating dilemma, isn't it? And one that's especially relevant in today's world, where everything seems to be in constant flux.
Exactly. To help us untangle this knot, we're diving into an essay by Friedrich Hayek called Principles or Expediency. Now, Hayek was a Nobel Prize-winning economist and philosopher, and his work can get pretty dense, but trust me, the insights he offers in this essay are incredibly powerful, and we're going to break them down in a way that makes sense for everyone, even if you've never heard of Hayek before.
That's right. We want you to walk away from this deep dive feeling like you've had a chance to really grapple with these ideas and maybe even apply them to your own life and decision-making.
So let's start with the basics. Hayek spends a lot of time talking about freedom, but he defines it in a very specific way. It's not just about doing whatever you want, whenever you want.
Right, it's deeper than that. Hayek saw freedom as the ability to use your knowledge and skills, to pursue your own goals and make your own choices, within a framework of rules that apply to everyone equally. Think of it like a game of soccer. You're free to move the ball and try to score, but you have to stay within the boundaries of the field and follow the rules of the game. Without those rules, the game would descend into chaos, and no one would really be free to play.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not about being selfish or
Yeah.
disregarding others.
Not at all. In fact, Hayek was very clear that his definition of freedom was meant to encompass all sorts of people, from those pursuing personal gain to those working towards the common good. The key is that everyone has the same basic freedoms and is bound by the same set of rules.
So how does this idea of freedom connect to the central question of principles versus expediency?
Well, Hayek's core argument is this. A free society can only survive if it's grounded in a set of enduring principles, not just reacting to each crisis or problem as it arises. Imagine you're building a house. You wouldn't just start throwing bricks together without a blueprint.
Right.
You need a solid foundation and a clear plan to guide your construction. Principles are like that blueprint. For free society, they provide the stability and predictability that allow individuals to flourish and pursue their own goals.
So focusing only on what seems like the easiest or most convenient solution in the moment, without considering those underlying principles, can actually weaken the foundations of a free society.
Exactly. Hayek warned against what he called the road to serfdom, this idea that by constantly choosing expediency over principles, we could gradually slide into tyranny without even realizing it. It might seem like a dramatic claim, but think about it this way. Imagine a government that starts enacting policies that seem well-intentioned, like controlling prices to make goods more affordable, or censoring certain types of speech to promote harmony.
Okay, I can see how those policies might appeal to people in the short term.
Right. But the problem is that once you start down that path of overriding individual freedoms for what seems like the greater good, it becomes very difficult to stop. Each new crisis or challenge becomes an excuse to further erode those freedoms, until eventually you end up with a society where individual choice and autonomy are severely limited.
That's a chilling thought. It's like those sci-fi movies, where a seemingly benevolent AI takes over and starts making all the decisions for humanity, for our own good.
Precisely. And Hayek's point is that this process can happen gradually, almost imperceptibly, until one day we wake up and realize we've lost something precious, the ability to make our own choices and chart our own course.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap? How do we balance the need to address urgent problems with the importance of upholding these principles of freedom?
That's where things get really interesting, and we'll delve into that more after a quick break.
Welcome back to Phoenix Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about the dangers of letting expediency win out over principle. But Hayek wasn't all doom and gloom. No, he had some ideas about how to handle this.
Okay, good. Give us some hope here.
Yeah.
If we're always facing some crisis, how can we resist just going for that quick fix?
Well, one of Hayek's big points is that we have to be careful about how much power we give to governments. He was a big believer in limited government.
You mean not just letting the government do whatever it wants?
Exactly. Hayek argued that if a government is too powerful, that's when you see expediency take over. When politicians can control the economy or people's lives, they're more likely to, well, they'll make decisions that benefit them in the short term instead of thinking about the long-term principles.
That makes sense. Like the saying, power corrupts. Yeah, that's the idea. And Hayek thought one of the best ways to stop this corruption was to have a constitution. One that clearly limits what the government can do and protects individual rights.
Like guardrails on a highway, keeps you from going off track, even if you want to take a shortcut.
Precisely. Hayek believed that even leaders with good intentions can be tempted by expediency, especially when they're facing pressure from special interest groups or, trying to win elections.
So it's not enough to just have good intentions. You need a system in place that keeps things from going wrong, even with good intentions.
Exactly. That's why he stressed the importance of a system that constrains power and protects individual freedoms no matter who's in charge.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. Limited government, clear rules, individual rights, they all help prevent that slide into, what did he call it, the road to serfdom. But what about the rest of us? What can we do on an individual level to, resist that pull toward expediency?
No, that's a great question. It gets to the heart of what Hayek was trying to do with his writing. He wasn't just writing for, academics or politicians. He was trying to reach everyday people and get them thinking critically about the world.
So he was like a public intellectual, trying to spark conversation.
Exactly. And one of his main messages was that we all have a responsibility to uphold those principles of freedom, even in our own lives. It's not just about voting or supporting certain policies. It's about making choices that reflect those values in our interactions, in our work, in our communities.
What would that look like? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Imagine you own a business and you're tempted to, say, cut corners to save money or to get ahead of the competition.
Like using cheaper materials even if they're not as safe, or not paying your employees a fair wage.
Yeah. Things like that. Those might seem like easy solutions in the short term, but they go against the principles of honesty, fairness, responsibility, all those things that are essential for a free society.
So it's not just about what's good for me right now. It's about how my actions affect everyone else.
Exactly. And it's not always easy. It can mean making sacrifices, standing up for what's right even when it's hard, resisting the temptation to take the easy way out even when it hurts.
We've been talking about the problems with ignoring principles, but is there a danger in, sticking to principles too rigidly? What happens when principles clash, or when they lead to results that seem unfair?
That's a great point. And Hayek actually talked about this too. He wasn't saying we should blindly follow principles no matter what. He knew that sometimes we have to make hard choices, weigh different principles against each other, think about the real-world consequences of what we do.
So it's not about being a robot who just follows the rules. It's about using our judgment and trying to make the best choices we can.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because it means we have to think critically, question our assumptions, be open to the possibility that we might be wrong. It's not always comfortable, but it's how we maintain a free and dynamic society.
This makes me think about all those arguments you see online where people just yell at each other about who's right and who's wrong. It seems like we've forgotten how to have real conversations about principles.
That's a really important point. And Hayek would say that we have to be careful about how we use the language of principles. It's easy to just throw around words like freedom or justice without really thinking about what they mean. And we often use them just to justify our own opinions or to attack people who disagree with us.
So it's not enough to just say we believe in something. We have to really understand what it means and how it should guide us.
Right. And that means being willing to talk to people who see things differently. It means realizing that there might be more than one way to understand a principle, and that good people can disagree about how to put those principles into practice.
That's a powerful message, especially these days when we're so quick to judge people who don't agree with us.
Absolutely. And it's something Hayek emphasized in his work. He believed in individual freedom, but he also believed in civil discourse, in talking to people with different viewpoints.
This has given me a lot to think about. So we've talked about the problems with expediency, the importance of limited government and individual rights, the need to really engage with principles. Anything else we should be thinking about?
There's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about, the role of ideas. And that's what we'll dive into next. Welcome back to Phoenix Podcast. We've been talking about Hayek's principles or expediency and how he really emphasizes the importance of principles for a free society.
Yeah, and last time we ended on this intriguing idea about the role of ideas themselves, like how our thinking shapes those principles and ultimately our choices.
Right, and that's something Hayek dives into quite a bit. He believed that the ideas we hold, even if we're not fully aware of them, they really shape how we understand the world,
Hmm.
They influence how we interpret events, what we consider good or bad, even what we see as expedient in the moment.
So, like, even small, everyday ideas could have a bigger impact than we realize.
Exactly. He was particularly concerned about economic ideas because, misunderstandings about how economies work can lead to policies that seem good on the surface, but end up undermining freedom and prosperity in the long run.
Could you give us an example, something that would, resonate with our listeners?
Sure. Think about the idea that raising the minimum wage always benefits low-wage workers. It seems compassionate, right? Help people earn more. But what if, and this is something Hayek would point out, what if those higher labor costs force businesses to cut jobs or raise prices? In the end, you might end up hurting the very people you were trying to help.
Ah, so the road to hell is paved with good intentions, or, in Hayek's terms, the road to serfdom.
That's the idea. And it's not about being against helping workers. It's about understanding the complexities of economic systems, how even small changes can have these ripple effects, unintended consequences that we might not anticipate.
So what's the answer? Should we all become economics experts before forming an opinion?
Haha, no need for that. But I think Hayek's point is that we need to be more critical of the ideas we encounter, especially those that promise easy solutions. Like, ask yourself, what are the assumptions behind this idea? Who benefits from it? And who might be harmed, even unintentionally?
It's kind of like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah,
But with economics and politics, the stakes are much higher.
absolutely. Hayek argued that a free society needs more than just good laws and institutions. It needs a culture of critical thinking where ideas are debated openly, assumptions are challenged, and people are willing to, change their minds when they see better evidence.
So it's not just about having the right ideas, it's about the process of constantly testing and refining those ideas.
Exactly. It's a lifelong process, really. Hayek believed that human knowledge is constantly evolving, and we should always be open to questioning our own beliefs and learning from others.
This makes me think about all those heated debates you see online, you know. Maybe instead of just trying to win the argument, we should be focusing on asking more questions and really trying to understand different points of view.
It's a great point. And I think Hayek would agree. It's not about always agreeing with each other, but about understanding that everyone's perspective is shaped by their own experiences and the ideas they've been exposed to. Open, respectful debate is how we can refine our understanding and hopefully move closer to those principles that support a free society.
That's a powerful message. So bringing it back to the question of principles versus expediency, it seems like Hayek is urging us to be more than just reactive, to be active thinkers who are constantly evaluating the ideas behind our decisions.
That's a great way to put it, because in a world that's constantly changing, in a world full of complex challenges, just clinging to easy answers or unexamined beliefs won't lead us to a free and prosperous future.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. Any final thoughts for our listeners as they wrestle with these ideas out in the real world?
If there's one takeaway from Hayek, it's this. Be wary of the quick fix, the easy answer, the ideology that claims to have all the solutions. Embrace curiosity, critical thinking, and respectful debate. That's how we can navigate the path toward a truly free and flourishing future.
Well said. And on that note, we're signing off. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. We'll be sharing links to Hayek's work in the show notes so you can explore these ideas further.
And we'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation on our social media and let us know what you thought, what challenged your thinking, and what questions you're still grappling with.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and as always, keep diving deep.
See you next time.